The other thing that he did add was, this was on CNN's State of the Union, Lindsey Graham said that President Obama, he labeled him as stubborn-headed, delusional, and detached over the decision on the U.S. reaction to the unfolding violence in Iraq. Gentlemen, lady, I'm going to always give ladies first here. Let's see. Let's get to those three words here. Stubborn-headed, delusional, and detached. Now, before I ask you that, there are some people who are going to say he's doing the best he can under tough circumstances, to which you would immediately say,
I'd absolutely disagree with that. No way. He's in California on a vacation and not even paying attention to what's going on, although I have been assured through sources of the news that he's been in close contact with the White House, but he's not doing anything, and he's actually dragging his feet, calling for negotiations, but we're way past negotiations in the region.
Well, doesn't there have to be some negotiations? Isn't that really where things start sooner or later? You have to at least start talking.
Well, on America's Forum this morning, we heard from General Vallely and also former Congressman Pete Hoekstra, and both of them made the point that we really can't afford to delay here. The president cannot once again kind of dither in a Hamlet fashion. Do we do this, do we do that? We need to get troops moving. We need to get airplanes in the air. We need to get surveillance assets. No one's talking about actually putting American boots on the ground. But the other side of this is just as Senator Graham said, we can't allow this group to get stronger and stronger and stronger, because the next attack may not be 2,000 miles away from the United States homeland.
Isn't that what we're looking at here, is that you have to realize that you have to do something at least to stop, because it will grow. We've seen this happen before. Al-Qaeda, how many people in America had no idea what Al-Qaeda was in the year 1999 and 2000? All of a sudden they knew it in 2001. I think that's what he's indicating.
Airstrikes, and then we're going to have to work with the Arab League of Nations to use their special forces to go in and dismantle ISIS and at least weaken the region, more so because right now we've seen that they've turned Syria into a jihadist Disneyland, and that's completely inappropriate and not helpful for anybody.
Can we trust the Arab League of Nations, though? I think is what a lot of people will ask, because we're always talking about having to trust somebody and work with somebody, and I do believe it's fair to say that in the Middle East, many of these factions and governments we get involved with, they make wonderful promises, and they never or rarely ever follow through.
This is where the world is looking for a leader to step in, and if Obama does not step in with the administration to work together with the Arab League of Nations, we're going to have a really big problem. The Arab League of Nations, while we trust them, we have to work alongside with them in conjunction, which is going to require the United States to take a step onto the world stage again and take control of the situation. Because if we do not do anything, there's going to be a vacuum, and this is only going to gain more momentum and cause a bigger issue and destabilize the region even further.
I think that's a good point, but I would go even further. We've got to get our European allies involved in this. Europe has interests as well. When we're talking about Syria, when we're talking about Iraq, we're right on the doorstep of Turkey, which now has a humanitarian crisis with all of the refugees fleeing there. And of course, Turkey, the bridge between Asia and Europe. The Europeans have a big interest here. They also were involved in the war in Iraq, and they've got to step forward and get involved as well.
You used the word vacuum, which I think is always a fair word to use, because I think there's a number of people out there, certainly military veterans and strategists specifically, who will say there already is a vacuum. The vacuum exists. It has been there for a while. We don't ever seem to get to the point, for whatever reason, of filling that, of not getting to the vacuum point. I think it's really what people want. We always get there. How can we not see it and stop it before we get to that point?
Well, we have to fill the void. There is a void of leadership going on, and we have to fill that, and that's absolutely important. And we see what happens in the past if we don't do that. In '93, when we had the World Trade Center bombings, nothing happened. 5 years later, in '98, the embassies were bombed in Africa. And that's that's just another example of what happens when we don't do anything.
I think that's a point too, David, because you've been covering news for a long time here. We know what happens. We have seen history at least tell us that things happen in a sequential way. Why can't we learn?
So what happens is the Obama administration will say, well, do you want to go back to the Bush years? Do you want to go ahead and invade a country based on weapons of mass destruction that turn out not to actually be there? So then their straw argument is that you either go in with hundreds of thousands of troops and put boots on the ground, or you do nothing because you're powerless. I've heard too many times from this administration that America is unable. We're unable in Libya. We're unable in Afghanistan. We're unable in Iraq. I think this situation is so serious that we're going to see an administration that can't dither anymore, and they've got to begin to take some steps to defend America's interests.
Where's the middle ground? Because it
Precisely.
seems no matter what happens, all we hear is it's this or this, and there's nothing here. Isn't there something in the middle? I mean, trust me, I think maybe I've heard this before from a lot of military strategists, that you have to leave something behind. You can't just walk away.
Sure. And the question is, were we really earnest in trying to pursue a forces agreement with Iraq? Did we pull out too soon rather than hang in there and find a way to bring them to the negotiating table, get that agreement that we needed so we could continue to have at least 10, 20,000 troops there to kind of head the situation off? Now we're looking at a situation. When they went into Mosul, those insurgents, not only did they grab helicopters and armored vehicles, they apparently also grabbed Stinger missiles. If they bring Stingers down to the Baghdad airport within, they don't have to take the airport, they can come within miles, you're going to see that airport shut down. And by the way, if that should happen, then how are you going to evacuate the 3,000 American personnel who are in that country right now?
Absolutely.
We have a really big problem right now, tactically and strategically.
Well, we have Marines already on the ground right now trying to help them out of the U.S. Embassy. They're not saying they're not calling it an evacuation. They're calling it a replacement, if you will, displacement. They're putting people in different places right now to get them out of it. But certainly we know what it is. They don't want to get caught with another embassy that has massive amounts of problems.
And this is, right now, we're in the making of a Benghazi Part 2 if we don't do something about it. You know, you're talking about why did we just pull out immediately of Iraq? Because you know what, President Obama saw this as a way for political expediency for his re-election, and it worked, unfortunately, but it worked. And now we have an issue, and the thing is this issue has been looming. This isn't news. This isn't like brand new. Everyone saw this coming, but nobody prepared for it to take place, and now everyone's trying to backpedal and say, well, what do we do? What we do is we look at history, and we know right now our administration is currently in the situation towards the end of the Carter years. This is a rerun. We've seen this before. So how do we fix this? We go in with airstrikes, and we work alongside the Arab League of Nations, along with our European allies, and we make things happen to destabilize ISIS.
That's the other thing, too. I keep hearing European allies. It's wonderful to hear all these people that we talk to, and we want them involved. But doesn't it seem too often that America goes in and we have coalitions, we have American allies, and for whatever reason, by the time we actually get to the point of being on the ground, whether it be by air, sea, land, makes no difference, it sort of evaporates a little bit. We never seem to get the real support that we need. Why is that?
Well, we're going to have a really hard time right now because President Obama has not done anything on the world stage that's of note or has done anything when other people have reached out to us for help. He's turned his back continually. He's had lackluster leadership, and he's done nothing but to continually push forward on his own interests.
Do you get that feeling, though, David, that really we're at a point right now where it doesn't make a difference how much we say it, that we don't have as much European backing as the president might tell us we have?
So some of that is the Europeans, traditional reluctance to get involved. We saw that in Russia and Crimea. They really didn't want to do anything. So that is why America traditionally has needed strong presidents, take strong leadership positions, and to really lead the rest of the world. If you don't do that, then of course the rest of the world is going to follow. Now, what we have to look at now is we have to go beyond President Obama, what mistakes he may have had. We've got a critical crisis situation in Iraq. We've got to decide what we're going to do. One idea is that the country is liable to break up with the Kurds in the north, and then the kind of radical Sunnis that we've seen sweep
Very
through the
liable,
middle,
as a matter of fact.
and then the Shias with the lower third, Baghdad and below. And the question, if that happens, is when you have a decentralized government, doesn't that invite the same sort of mayhem and attacks and radicalism that we saw in Afghanistan when the Taliban were in charge there? You got to have a central government. So can you divide a country in three parts and still keep the jihadis who are going back and forth and ignoring the border with Syria from eventually launching some kind of a major attack on either Western interests or the U.S. homeland?
Okay, about 30 seconds. We're going to take a break, come back. We have a lot more to talk about there. But you mentioned central government. Can we all sit here and agree that right now when it comes to a central government in Iraq, those are two really wonderfully fancy words because, in essence, what government is there that seems to be able to create substantive change and be in control?
Right. No, and that's the biggest problem is that we're seeing the president over there. He's having a hard time actually bringing both sides together, and we left way too soon before he had the ability to show that he was of seriousness and he would be able to do this.
And some of those people in government may be serious, but they seem to be more serious in lining their own pockets.
Right.
More than anything
huge
else.
amount of corruption over there, absolutely.
Which we run into seemingly everywhere, no matter what we try to do. What you're going to do for us right now is let us know what you think about this on social media. And we'll talk about it here because we're going to come back after the break. We have a lot to talk about, including Tony Blair, the former UK Prime Minister who spoke up about this. This is Midpoint, where every day we question everything.